Hello, welcome back to the You at Your Best podcast. I'm your host, Morgan. So for this week's episode, I want to talk about owning your identity and being yourself regardless of other people's opinions. So for me, whenever I hear owning your identity and being yourself, the first thing I think of is being yourself in that you just act exactly how you've always acted and just be that person that you've always been. But owning your identity and being yourself actually takes more reflection and healing and understanding yourself first. It's really hard for us to be ourselves whenever we're unhealed and not really reflecting on our life and our life choices. A lot of us will say that we're being ourselves whenever we haven't even taken the time to think about if that actually is who we are. We just act how we've always been and just say that it's who we are, and that's kind of where people with really aggressive personalities come from. People who are really mean for no reason. They'll say that that's just their personality, it's just who they are, but a lot of the time that's really not who you are. I know for me, I'm the type of person that always feels better whenever I'm honest, and that's important to me, honesty for myself. But it's also true that kindness is important to me. Being kind is probably more important to me than honesty is. And because of that, even though I feel better whenever I'm just straight up and just honest, I also have to be kind whenever I'm being honest. I don't want to be one of those people that's just brutally honest and just says that it's my personality. And I think that's a really great example of someone being who they've always been versus someone reflecting and using that quality for good rather than just saying it's just who I am and that's who I'm always going to be. I'm never going to change that. Because being yourself and accepting yourself, accepting your identity, it's not about being the person that you've always been and just accepting yourself in that way, even if you're unkind and not being true to your morals. It's about reflecting and catching yourself whenever you do something that you don't really love, but at the same time accepting yourself and accepting where you're at right now. An example of that is, for me, it's really important to be kind to people, but for a long time, I didn't really know how to do that. I didn't know how to be a kind person towards other people, even though it was important to me to be kind and I wanted to act in that way. I didn't practice it very often, so it was harder for me to be a kind person whenever I hadn't had practice. So my morals and reflection was to notice how I'm acting and notice how I want to change my actions, but then accepting where I'm at right now during that time would have been accepting the fact that sometimes I accidentally mess up. Sometimes I accidentally say the wrong thing. Sometimes I say things that I don't mean and it comes off in the wrong way. And that used to happen a lot. I was trying to be a good person. I knew my morals, but I would unintentionally say something that sounded really unkind, even though it wasn't what I meant, because I was still learning. And that's okay. That's what I mean whenever I say you need to accept yourself. And of course, if you say something really messed up, apologize. That's something that I really struggled with back then, something that I'm doing so much better about now. And then also reflecting. Whenever you do something that doesn't align with you, or you say something that doesn't align with you, reflect on that. Look at your actions and notice what you did wrong, what you did that you personally don't really like, that doesn't feel like you, doesn't feel like the person that you see in your head. Even if you acted in a way that doesn't show your personal identity and who you believe that you are, that doesn't mean that you're bad. That's just because you just need practice. I know everyone says practice makes perfect, and it's true because we need to practice in order to become the person that we want to be. We need to put ourselves out there and fail multiple times until we get to where we need to be. And that's why a huge part of becoming that person that you need to be is to make sure that you're not isolated, to spend more time around other people, even whenever it's hard, to practice in real life situations with real people, to put yourself out there and try to make friends, even if you mess up. If you do something really bad, you can apologize, you can explain to that person what's going on, and just keep on working on it. And I don't mean keep on going back and keep on treating people poorly. I mean, if you do something and you mess up, reflect on that without shame and figure out what you need to do next time to be better in that situation. An example I have is this week I made a podcast episode. I was really proud of it after I got done recording it. And then while I was editing it, I realized that I spent the entire episode being extremely negative and complaining and oversharing a lot of information that I don't really want to put out for the whole world to hear. And instead of doing what I used to do and just being angry at myself and letting it make me lose motivation in my podcast and letting it turn into insecurity, I thought, okay, maybe I can make this work. I kept on trying to edit. I took out some parts. I knew that I would probably have to re-record some parts or add extra things that were more positive into it. And I thought, okay, maybe I can make this work. Even after editing it, I realized that the episode really just wasn't something that I want to put out there. But I didn't beat myself up. I saw that there was a problem. I reflected. I thought about what I want to do and what I want my podcast to be. And instead of what I used to do, just letting it become this huge self-hatred, I let it help me grow. I let the situation where I made a mistake help me grow, help me figure out what I would like to do, how I want my podcast to present. And because of that, I'm making this episode now. And I am able to work harder on that and work harder to make sure that my podcast is what I want. And if I make an episode that I don't like, remembering that it's okay. It's just a part of the process. And it doesn't mean anything bad. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad podcaster. It doesn't mean that I'm just all over the place and don't know how to talk in a way that respects myself. None of that is true. I am learning how to talk in a way that respects myself, respects other people, and also shows the point that I'm trying to get to. So if there's something that you feel guilty about that maybe you did that you feel is wrong, it's okay to accept that that happened and move on. Accept that it happened, reflect, figure out what you can do better next time, and move on. Because you can't change the past no matter how bad it was, the thing that happened. You can't change it. That's impossible. You can't go back in time and make yourself do something different. And also, we're always growing and maturing and developing. And whenever we make mistakes, that's a huge part of it. But a lot of us, myself included, instead of letting those mistakes help us grow, we let them keep us in that same spot. We feel like if we make a mistake, that means that we have to remain being that person that is making all of those mistakes. And we don't. We don't have to keep ourselves in that spot just because we feel guilty that we messed up. You can feel guilty that you messed up and process that guilt, but also learn to reflect on what you did. If you feel guilty about something while you're reflecting, think about why you feel guilty. Because a lot of the time, it's because you act in a way that you don't want to, but you're trying. And for me, especially whenever I started trying to get better and I started trying to grow as a person, I would mess up and do something. And then all of a sudden, it felt like I was just back in the same spot that I was in before, which isn't true. A part of growth is messing up. And another example that I have is whenever I started healing and I started learning that I'm allowed to experience and express my emotions, I kind of took that very literally. And one time I went to the doctor and I was waiting for a really long time. And normally I would just be patient and it's irritating. I don't want to wait that long. I want to hurry up and get out of the doctor, but I would just sit there and wait. But this time, because I was healing and growing and learning how to express myself, the doctor came in eventually after me waiting for a really long time. And she explained to me that something happened and someone had to go by ambulance to the hospital. And then she was like, I'm sorry for the wait. Me now and me even before this moment would have been like, that's okay, like no worries. But during this time, because I knew that I needed to express myself authentically, but I didn't understand how to do that in a kind way, I just knew that my feelings were valid. So instead of saying it's okay, I said something like, I had to wait a long time and I'm tired and I want to go home. Not even acknowledging the fact that someone had to go by ambulance to the hospital. I just straight up kind of just was selfish, acted in a selfish way. And during that time, I thought it was fine. I thought I did the right thing by just like saying how I felt and leaving it at that. And then I realized a couple months later, like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Why was I so rude to her? But me being rude to her doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. Doesn't mean that I restarted my healing and went back to how I used to be. I actually, after I started healing, started acting worse than I did before I healed, because I started understanding that I'm allowed to feel emotions and I'm allowed to express how I felt, but I didn't know how to express that in a kind, authentic way while also expressing it. I didn't know how to be kind and authentic at the same time during that time, and that's just a part of the process. But now looking back, I would never act like that, ever. Like, I would never say something like that. I would just say it's okay and move on. I wouldn't explain that it was irritating that I had to wait so long because something happened to someone and they had to go by ambulance somewhere. It's important to me that I am empathetic and sympathetic towards that person who had to do that and towards the workers who had to take a pause on their job and everything that they were doing in order to help this person out. And it's a little bit embarrassing saying that example, but that's just a huge part of growth. We make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. Okay, now that I've talked about reflecting and letting your failures guide you into becoming the person that you want to be, now I want to talk about accepting who you are. I feel like a lot of us, especially women, we have a really hard time accepting who we are whenever we feel that we don't express ourselves naturally in the same way as other people. I saw a video on Instagram yesterday that I really related to. The girl was saying, have you ever been in a room with other women and you feel inferior? You feel out of place. You feel like they're above you. And she was saying how we a lot of the time feel like that because we're around women who express themselves, and whenever they're naturally being themselves, it's more of a feminine embodiment. They act in a way that is exactly how we view femininity, how society views femininity. And because of that, we really struggle with accepting ourselves, and we feel like we're not good enough because they are expressing themselves in a way that we don't express ourselves, and that doesn't really resonate with us. But we want to be like them so bad because we want to embody femininity. But truth is, we can embody femininity by being ourselves, embracing your femininity and being who you are. It's less about fitting into a mold and more about being yourself and letting who you are define your femininity, not trying to fit into a mold and trying to be like other people. There are some people who their natural self is more of what society deems feminine, but that doesn't mean that someone who isn't like that is less feminine. That just means we need to learn to be ourselves and accept ourselves as we are, and then let that be our feminine embodiment. We, a lot of the time, are told that we have to be a certain way in order for us to be perceived as feminine, in order for us to be accepted. We have to be joyful and outgoing and bubbly, and that's a characteristic that a lot of people like. It's a characteristic that a lot of specifically men like, and we feel like we have to be like that ourselves. We have to be less confrontational and more carefree and laid back. And I, in the past in my podcast, definitely struggled with that, with being who I am versus trying to be someone that is more accepted by society. And I've made podcast episodes talking about that kind of stuff. And although it's important to me to be a more feminine woman and to be more laid back and gentle and relaxed. The reason why that's important to me is because that's who I am, not because I'm trying to fit into a mold. But a lot of women are not like that. A lot of women are more confrontational. And that's something that I'm actually working towards being. I want to be more confrontational. And also, it's not so black and white. We can be both. We can be more feminine, more laid back, more agreeable, while also being confrontational. We can be kind and come off as the embodiment of feminine energy, while also standing up for ourselves whenever someone says something that's really shitty. Not letting people treat us poorly, still setting boundaries, but also being kind and light. We can be both, even in our relationships. I made a podcast episode in the past, one of my super early podcasts, where I talked about letting go of control and how women, a lot of the time, our brains are naturally wired to be controlling. And I still think that's true. For me, I am naturally a controlling person, and I think it's important for us to learn to let go of that control. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that that is something that we struggle with if we do. But we should also be able to freely express ourselves. If someone does something that hurts us, we should be able to say something. I think that we should reflect and learn how to act in a way that's not controlling, not only for other people, but also for ourselves. Of course, whenever you're acting controlling, people are not going to respond well. I know I never respond well to controlling people, but that's not even the main reason why we should stop with the controlling behavior. It's also because it negatively impacts us. Whenever we focus so much on something that we can't change. That's kind of what I was trying to get across in that episode, but I actually think that it came off more of me saying that we need to stop acting controlling because it comes off in a way that makes other people respond poorly. And again, that still is true, but letting go of control is more of a personal thing. Letting go of control means that you actually gain more control in your life because you're focusing on what you can control instead of focusing on what you can't. And embodying who you are, discovering who you are, that's a huge part of all of this. And like I was saying, it's important to reflect, but it's also important to accept yourself where you are right now. Like for me, I am more of a person that, as of right now, maybe in the future it will change, but I'm more of a calm, laid back person. I really struggle to be bubbly and outgoing, and that's something that I've really felt insecure about for all of my life. Really hated that I sometimes come off as monotone and bland whenever I don't feel like I'm a bland, monotone person, but so many people have told me, like, you're so monotone or you're so bland, or whenever you talk, it's boring. Well, people haven't said that whenever I talk, it's boring. It's felt like that's been implied. But truth is, that's who I am right now. That's how I'm acting right now. And I know that I am not a bland, boring, monotone person. I know that if people would take the time to get to know me, they would see the incredible person that I am. They would see things about me, characteristics that I have that I absolutely love about myself. But some people just don't notice those things. And just because those people don't notice those things doesn't mean that you aren't worthy. Just because someone doesn't notice that you are incredibly emotionally intelligent, incredibly kind to people, but they do notice that you're monotone and boring, just because they don't see your worth doesn't mean that it's not there. Those people, they don't see that thing that you love about yourself because they probably don't have that quality. The people in our lives, if they don't notice that we are super kind and super emotionally intelligent, it's probably because they don't value that stuff. They don't value kindness. They don't value growing as a person and gaining emotional intelligence. And maybe they're more of the type of person that values the way that other people perceive them. So it's really important to them that they're bubbly all the time. And I'm not saying that people who are bubbly are bad. I think if you're bubbly and a lot of people criticize super bubbly people, if that's who you are truly, then that's what you need to accept. And also, whenever we learn to accept ourselves and qualities that we have within ourselves, we also learn to be able to be around people who are different from us. A lot of the time, if you're a more bubbly person, but a lot of people talk poorly about that, and it has caused you to feel a little bit insecure about that, whenever you're around someone who is more monotone, that's what you'll comment on. That's what you'll notice. You'll think that that person is bland and boring. And same for the opposite. Whenever you're more of a monotone person and you see someone being bubbly and outgoing, it can feel really triggering because you feel like that's what you're supposed to be, because people have always responded better to people who are like that. But then whenever you're bubbly, people assume that you're stupid. It kind of just feels like no matter what, we can't win. There's always going to be something that's said about us, and that's the truth. There's always going to be something that other people don't like about us, and we have to just learn to be okay with that. We have to learn that someone else's opinion of us is 100% personal, and because of their own mind, their own issues, their own personality, and it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with them. Someone's opinion of you has everything to do with them. And I'm not saying that to say that you shouldn't reflect and be better, and if you make a mistake that it's okay because it's just that person perceived it in a certain way and it's not true about who you are. You need to reflect and you need to figure out if that's something that you think is okay to do. And if you messed up, fix that mistake by apologizing, by being better next time. What I'm talking about is whenever people don't like certain qualities that you have that you like about yourself, and that is a big part of who you are. If you've reflected and realized that even though other people don't like this thing about you, you do like it. You do like that you're more laid back. You do like that you're more bubbly. You do like that you can have deep conversations. You do like that you hate small talk, or you do like that you love small talk. Whatever it is about you. I used to be the type of person that I thought I absolutely despised small talk, but I actually enjoy small talk. I like talking to people. I like sometimes having conversations that are not super deep, but I also love having deep conversations, and my soul feels so fulfilled whenever I can have deep conversations with someone. That's how I connect with people, is through deep conversations. I don't feel connected with someone as much whenever I'm having small talk, but that doesn't mean that I don't like small talk. I still enjoy it. Small talk is great for whenever you are around people that maybe you're not super connected with, but maybe want to form a connection in the future with, or people that you have to be around, but they're not your people. Small talk is great for being around those types of people that you want to talk to and you have to engage with, but maybe aren't super interested in having a friendship with. Small talk is also great for forming friendships in the future. And I used to always be the type of person that didn't understand how to form a friendship unless I started off like kind of trauma dumping together. But that's not how friendships work. Friendships almost always start off in a small talk setting. And you get to know each other through small talk and through slowly being able to have conversations with each other that are deeper. Small talk leads to that. You can start the conversation by talking about the weather, and then you end up sharing your traumas together by the end of the conversation. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And that's something that I want to accept about myself, is that yes, I connect with people better through deep conversation, but that doesn't mean that I can't do small talk. That doesn't mean that I have to tell myself that I don't enjoy small talk and have to fit myself into a box of being one specific type of person, of being the type of person that hates small talk and can only connect with people through deep conversation. Because that's not true. I'm allowed to be both. And a huge part of accepting yourself is accepting that you can be two different things. You're not just one thing. We have so many aspects to our personalities and to our identity, and it's not fair to fit yourself into a box. And there could be one thing that you, as of right now, feel like is who you are, and in a couple of years, you are entirely different from that. And that's okay. I am most of the time a more monotone, laid back person, but I am also a bubbly person. Whenever I see a cat or a baby, I get so excited and I get like the baby voice because they're so cute. And I'm bubbly whenever I see things that make me happy. But just because I'm being monotone and more laid back and more calm doesn't mean that I'm not happy, because I'm happy doing both, because both are a part of who I am. I'm a more laid back person a lot of the time because growing up I felt like I had to, and I felt like I had to hide that part of me that was bubbly. But I'm also a laid back person because it's just who I am. I'm a bubbly person because it's just who I am. And that's why accepting ourselves and reflecting is so important. And I actually really want to become a more bubbly person. I want to upgrade myself and express that side of me more, even whenever it's scary. That's something that I've been trying to do with my podcast. And even though I won't be bubbly and outgoing in every single episode, I also just want to work on that. I want to be someone that has an intro that is not bland and boring and monotone. And that's something that I'm choosing to work towards. But just because that is true, it doesn't mean that I have to let go of that identity of me being a more monotone person. It doesn't mean that I have to be bubbly all the time. Whenever I'm with my baby, I'm naturally a more bubbly person. I talk in a really high-pitched voice. I am more expressive. But whenever I'm with my boyfriend, sometimes I'm more bubbly and sometimes I'm more laid back. Whenever I'm with adults and people that I'm comfortable with, I've noticed that I am both. I'm fully expressive of myself through being bubbly sometimes and more laid back other times. And it's okay for you to accept that part of you that you always felt like you had to hide. It's okay for you, in my experience, in my example, to be more bubbly, even though you felt like you had to be more monotone and it feels kind of uncomfortable. It's okay to be that way, and it's okay to accept that part of yourself, but it's also okay to accept that the part of you that acts the way that you do out of trauma is still who you are. The part of you that acts more laid back and monotone is still a part of the person that you are. You don't have to take that away. You don't have to be entirely bubbly, because who we grow to be as adults, it's created through who we naturally are to begin with, just our personality that we were born with, and then also our life experiences. And it's okay to be both. It's okay that even if you being less bubbly is a trauma response, it's okay to still accept that that is a part of who you are. It's okay to still be like that. I used to look at it so black and white. I was like, if it's a trauma response, then I have to take it away entirely, and I have to figure out exactly who I am and be exactly the person that I want to be. And looking at it like that kind of delayed my healing, because maybe in a couple of years I'll be entirely more bubbly and less monotone. And I know I keep on saying bubbly and monotone all the time, but that's a really great example for this episode. Maybe in a couple years I will be less monotone and more bubbly, and that's okay. That's just a part of the healing process. I don't know if my true self and my true identity is a more monotone person or if it's a more bubbly person, and that's okay. I'm allowed to be both, and right now, who I am in this moment, that's who I'm going to accept. That's who I'm going to get to know. Accepting yourself doesn't mean holding yourself back, keeping yourself in a box. It means letting yourself fully and authentically express yourself, even whenever it doesn't come off as how people view you. Like, for me, example, people naturally view me as a more monotone, kind of bland person, but that's not who I am all the time. I can be monotone and bland sometimes and bubbly and excited other times. And even whenever it's hard to be bubbly and outgoing, especially around my family, that doesn't mean that I can't be like that. And sometimes it can be really hard for us to be certain ways because we maybe were taught that that way is bad, or we felt like we had to be more like that. For me, the reason why I feel like I can't be bubbly is because I've always been put into a box of being this person that's monotone and bland, and I felt like I had to be that. Even though I didn't like that identity, it still feels uncomfortable being more outgoing. But even whenever it's uncomfortable, we still need to work towards being that. Like, for example, for me, whenever my baby was first born, whenever it was just her me and my boyfriend, I was fine. I acted however I wanted. But then the second my family would come around or my boyfriend's grandmother would come around, since it felt like they saw me as a more monotone person, I felt like I had to keep myself in that box that they saw me as, or that I perceived that they saw me as. And because of that, whenever they would come over, it was really hard for me to interact with my baby in the way that I naturally did. And I think because of that, they thought that maybe I wasn't really interacting with her in the beginning. And I still struggle with that now. It's not as bad because I've forced myself to try to be as authentic as I can in the situation, focus on her and not focus on everyone else, even whenever it's hard. And that's a huge part of accepting yourself and accepting your identity. It's even whenever it's uncomfortable to act in a certain way, you still let yourself do it because you know that's who you are. And that's very important. Accepting yourself doesn't just mean accepting that that's who you are and only acting in that way in certain situations, and whenever you're around certain people, you just don't show that part of your personality. And I know for some people we do need to tone it back a little bit, and the situation kind of depends, and we can't be fully ourselves around certain people because maybe we feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that's a different situation. If you're not safe, if you don't feel safe, then do whatever you need to be safe. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about more of the people that would be okay. Like, you would be okay, they would be okay if you acted a certain way. They may say something to you, it may be uncomfortable, but everything is still fine and it's not going to hurt you. It's just uncomfortable. Okay, and then the next part of owning your identity is discovering your own personal values and choosing to act in a way that aligns with your values. If you don't want to be the type of person that controls people, for example, I talked about that earlier in this episode. If you know that you're naturally a very controlling person, but you don't want to be like that, then start acting in ways that are less controlling. Start reminding yourself that you can only focus on what you can control. And also, whenever you do that, it feels like you're more in control anyways because you're focusing on the things that you can control. What you're focusing on is what enhances. If you're focusing on the things that you can't control, then you are going to end up feeling completely out of control. The things that you can't control is other people's actions, things that happen, situations that come up. But what you can control is yourself, how you respond, how you treat people, how kind or unkind you are in a situation. Depending on the situation, you don't have to be nice all the time. You can set boundaries and come off as rude if you need to take care of yourself. That's what you do. And really evaluate yourself, really reflect and figure out what your personal values are. And I know a lot of the time that can be really hard because it's so broad, it's such a broad statement and you don't really know where to begin with that. But something that I do a lot is if something happens that really triggers you or really hurts your feelings, if someone says something to you that makes you upset or resentful, start there. Reflect on why that bothered you, and that'll help you understand your personal morals, because if someone doing something bothers you, you know that you will not act in that same way. And this is honestly something that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time and effort. And I know for me personally, I've always been the type of person that doesn't feel like doing it. If it takes extra work, if it isn't like instant gratification, I just don't want it. But that's a huge part of growing. We have to learn to do things even whenever we don't want to. Another thing that you could do to reflect your values and figure out what makes you who you are is to notice whenever you're happiest. Notice situations that made you happy, things that people did for you that made you happy. We naturally notice strengths in people that we have in ourselves. So if you notice that someone did something really kind for you, like for me, whenever my boyfriend comes up to me while I'm doing dishes and says, "Hey, move over, let me do them. You go sit down. You go take a rest." I love that he does that, and I really value whenever he does that because I value that quality within myself. Anything that you value in someone else, any quality that you value in them, you have that quality too. Even if you have a hard time finding it, even if you mess up along the way while trying to become that person, you have that quality because you would not notice it if it wasn't a quality that you have. And same with negative qualities too. If you notice a negative quality that another person has, a lot of the time that's a quality that you also have or have had in the past and you no longer want to do. How you feel about other people is a reflection of yourself. So if you notice something that someone does that makes you really angry, that means that that's a quality that you do not want to have. But it wouldn't upset you if it wasn't something that you have been able to do or you were capable of doing, if that makes sense. And I know a lot of the time we get upset because we know that we wouldn't do something to someone, but we notice that quality because that is something that we could easily do too. We just choose not to. And that's a good way to figure out your morals, is noticing things that people do and how you respond to them. If someone doing something for you makes you happy, that means that that is something that you should do more of. And if someone does something to you that makes you upset, that's something that you should do less of. Another thing that you could do in finding your morals and your identity and accepting your identity is finding specific role models that really help shape who you are. For me, I didn't start growing and maturing as a person until I started listening to podcasts, and I had those role models and people who had different perspectives on life than me, and they helped change me in so many ways. So if someone does something for you that makes you incredibly happy, makes you feel fulfilled, whether that's they make a podcast episode and you listen to it and it makes you realize something, it changes your mindset, spend more time around those people or listening to those people. If it's a podcast or if they're a celebrity of some kind, spend more time engaging with those people because they will help you grow and show you and help you along the way. And of course, you don't have to be exactly like them, but whenever they do something that brings you joy or inner peace, bring that quality into yourself. And I'm not saying just copy everything that they do and become the person that they are. I'm saying reflect and notice, like, if it makes you happy, do it. If it makes you sad whenever they do something, don't do that. And surrounding yourself with people that are more like you. Whenever people say that, it always confused me because I didn't really know what that meant. But the best way to figure out whenever someone is like you is if they make you happy more often. If they make you upset more often, then they're probably less like the person that you want to be. So stop being around the people that make you upset and be around people who bring you joy and peace and energy. Something else that you can do is you can journal. That's something that I've been trying to work more towards, is journaling and reflecting. I'm the type of person that I can't process things just through thinking. I have to get it out through speaking. A lot of the time, I don't process something fully until I start making a podcast episode about it, and then I have more of an understanding of it. Or writing it down, journaling, writing poetry. I've talked in previous episodes about how I really enjoy writing poetry. I really enjoy processing my emotions in that way. It feels so easy. It just comes so natural to me. And you could be different. There could be something that you do better. Maybe you process emotions better through talking to people. Maybe you need to vent to someone to be able to fully understand how you felt about a situation. Like if something made you really upset, maybe you need to vent to someone to understand why it made you upset. Or if something made you really happy, maybe you need to talk to someone, vent to them in a good way. Venting isn't just negative. Vent to them about why that made you happy and understanding it that way. And of course, make sure that that person is emotionally available, emotionally able to talk to you about this kind of stuff, because sometimes people are not, and they have been through a lot or they're going through a lot that day, and it's really hard for them to hear that. And same with you, if it's really hard for you to hear that kind of stuff, it's okay to say that you can't have this conversation right now, or you don't have the emotional capacity to listen. Anyone who gets upset at you for that is not a real friend anyways. And if you need to explain yourself too, that's okay. I think that's it for this week's episode. My baby woke up. It's 8 a.m. I started this episode around like 6:45. And I got her up and made her a bottle, and now she's ready to get up and play. So I think I'm going to go. I'm going to end this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next Sunday.